And we're live. Welcome to edition number 45 of the Boxing Gossip podcast. We do one every Wednesday at 8:30. So I know we've got a few new subscribers who've joined since last time we did a podcast. But yeah, every Wednesday at 8:30 we go live on the channel with a panel of boxing fans and discuss all the major news stories in the sport of boxing. Absolutely jam-packed show tonight because we actually didn't do a podcast last week. I had prior commitments, so we're going to do two podcasts over the course of one, if you like, tonight. Just want to give a quick shout out because the podcast that we did last, which was the David Haye, Tony Bellew sort of post-fight reaction type podcast, got more thumbs up than any other podcast we've done before. I think it got 178 people clicking the thumbs up. So just a quick note of thanks from myself for that support, and really want you guys to know that it's much appreciated. We've got a massively packed show tonight. We're going to start by talking about previous results. We're going to look at Golovkin-Jacobs, Roman Gonzalez, as well as all of the other fights that have taken place over the last 2 weeks. We're then going to move on and discuss some of the news in boxing. We're going to discuss the Golovkin-Jacobs pay-per-view figures, Peter Fury being denied a visa to New Zealand, as well as loads of other news. Brook versus Spence being confirmed and announced today. And then finally, we'll have a look ahead to next week's action, which is headlined by Crolla versus Linares. I've got Paul and I've also got Tom. Tom's joined as well. So I've got Paul and Tom who have joined live. Jet is going to join later on in the show tonight. So we should have a relatively full panel. We're going to start with Paul. I hope you guys join me in saying happy birthday to Paul. He's celebrating a significant birthday today. Paul's 21 again. So happy birthday to Paul. How you doing, mate?
It is, mate. Yeah. 21 again. I've been claiming it for a while now, and I'm just going to keep going. I don't care. But
good stuff.
I'm all right.
Good stuff. I'm just going to turn your volume up quickly, Paul, because I forgot to do that. There we go. Okay, so your volume's now up. So, Paul, let's start with Golovkin-Jacobs, mate. I think first thing I've got to ask is, how did you score it, and who did you have winning the fight?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see where my notepad is. I know I had I thought Golovkin won the fight. But it was a close fight. Let me see, what did I score it? I think I scored it. I can't see it at the minute. I think I scored it 116, 114 or something like that. Or however that works out. Maths is not my strong point, but with the point and whatnot, there wasn't much in it. I thought Golovkin won the fight, but there wasn't much in it. Don't really have any problem with anybody saying it was a draw or even that Jacobs narrowly won it. For me, I gave Jacobs everything I possibly could, and still had Golovkin winning it by a little bit. I just thought the main thing that kind of really kind of bugs me is kind of like a lot of the same people that were saying that the Kovalev Ward decision couldn't be a robbery because it was a close fight, which I agreed with. You can't really call it a robbery, and I did come out and say, while I had Kovalev winning the fight, I wasn't going to say it was a robbery because it was a close fight. Are now screaming robbery, and it's like, unless you think Danny Jacobs won this fight clearly, which if that's what you think, I mean, I don't know what the hell fight you were looking at, because that's definitely not what I saw. I had people giving Jacobs the first round, and I watched the first round again the other day. Jacobs landed a body punch and a jab in that first round, and Golovkin kind of peppered him with the jab a little bit. I thought it was a clear Golovkin round, and I just think some people don't seem to, I don't know, score a fight sort of like objectively. I don't know whether they go on heart, they go on kind of who they're rooting for or whatnot. But the fight itself, I mean, it wasn't classic by any means. Golovkin didn't look as good as he normally does to me. Jacobs did quite well. I've got to give Jacobs some credit. He did quite well in spots and whatnot. But I don't know. Golovkin seemed off to me. I don't know whether he respected Jacobs' power too much or whether he really is getting old. I mean, the man's 35. I just don't know. There is a school of thought that says that he kind of like I know I'm not sure about this, but there are some people that are saying that maybe he kind of like went easy a little bit to try and woo Canelo, and that he really wants that Canelo fight, and he kind of like maybe thought if he didn't just run through Jacobs, maybe Canelo would take the fight. I don't know. I think it'd be hard to do. It'd be hard to pull off, and I just think he's a human being. You know, he's a great fighter. I'm a fan of Golovkin, as you know. But I think it just showed that he's human, really above all else.
Was this a case of Golovkin maybe putting in a subpar performance, Paul, or was this maybe a case that this was the best opponent that Golovkin had been in with? And the fact that Danny Jacobs was substantially better than the previous opponents Golovkin had said to ring with.
Well, I mean, I think you've only got to look at what Lemieux did to Curtis Stevens to say, actually, I think probably Lemieux is probably a better fighter. I think the Golovkin that fought Lemieux would have beaten Jacobs quite more handily. Now, why that is, I don't know, but if you watch the Lemieux fight and watch that fight at the weekend, that wasn't the same Golovkin, in my opinion. It didn't. He didn't look anywhere near as. He didn't seem to be going for shots as much as anywhere near as much as he seemed like always does. You know, Golovkin is a guy that if he sees an opening, he's going to crack you. You know, like it's just as simple as that. And he wasn't doing that at the weekend. As I say, I'm not sure why. Whether it was just a bit too much respect for Jacobs and a concern about Jacobs' power. I don't know, because obviously Jacobs can crack a bit himself, has a very high knockout ratio as well. Maybe that was it. I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, the case is that Golovkin retains his belts and, remains the number one middleweight in the sport. A lot of British fans are talking about Golovkin versus Billy Joe Saunders, even Golovkin versus Chris Eubank Jr., Paul. What are your take on those fights, having seen, Golovkin maybe looking a bit older and maybe looking a step slower?
Well, I mean, I think he'd beat both of those guys. I think he would beat Eubank Jr. a lot easier. Billy Joe Saunders, I guess it really depends on which Billy Joe Saunders turns up. For me, Billy Joe Saunders, when he is at his best, is an elite fighter. I think he's probably got an even better chance than Danny Jacobs. For my money, I think Billy Joe Saunders at his best is better fighter than Danny Jacobs. But I also think Golovkin at his best would still beat both of them. I just don't think Golovkin was at his best at the weekend. I'm not sure that fight's going to happen. I saw an interview the other day with Billy Joe Saunders, who, while he was saying, "Yeah, let's get it on," and what did you see that one where it's in a pub? He says it's in his sister's pub.
Yeah, IFL TV, right? I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then at a certain stages, he was kind of putting conditions on it, and he was saying, well, if he thinks I'm going to take it, I am in training, but if he thinks I'm going to take it with 7 weeks out, he's got another thing coming in. It's kind of like, I don't like to hear sort of like, well, if it doesn't happen, it'll be this. I don't like to hear. We heard that with you remember when the Eubanks were saying they wanted the Triple G fight, and then at that Sky press conference after Junior's last fight, Senior started talking about, if it doesn't happen, it will be Sky's fault. If it doesn't happen, the first dollar's got to fall to June, this, that, and the other. And from then, I knew that he was I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew from as soon as I seen that it wasn't going to happen. And it just, that from Billy Joe the other night just had sort of like, it's sort of like rang like that for me. Do you know what I mean? I hope it happens. It's a good fight, but I'm not so sure it will. I'm not sure. You know, I mean, if you look at Billy Joe's last performance, to go from a performance like that to Golovkin is, I don't know, it's a bit of a leap for me.
It certainly is. Yeah, it certainly is. Okay, Paul. Cheers for that, mate. We'll bring you back in a little bit. Let me pop over to our mutual friend Iris. Tom, Iris, how you getting on, mate?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Loud and clear. Are you England or Ireland today?
I'm England today.
Well, you're coming through loud and clear, mate. So I'm going to start by asking you the same question I asked Paul, which is, how did you score Golovkin v Jacobs? Who did you have winning the fight?
Yeah, I got up in the middle of the night to watch the fight, but I forgot it was an East Coast fight. So I got up halfway through, so I missed the first 6 rounds.
Oh, disaster.
And I was so wrecked. You know, my kid has been sick over the weekend. I had no sleep and I watched it. I got really disappointed in Golovkin in the last 6 rounds. You know, I thought, like, I wasn't corpus menti, but I thought Jacobs won the last 6 rounds 4-2. But I didn't get then to see the fight then until Monday night, and I downloaded the top quality torrent of it and sat down to watch it anyway. And you know, I've been kind of primed to think that it was Jacobs' win. The way I put it, like, you know, like all the hype that's been out there. And so, like, usually when I watch a fight, you know, you don't really meticulously try and score. You kind of watch the fight and you kind of just think on the end of that round, oh, who do I think won it or something. But I decided to try and actually score this like I was a judge, you know, to actually properly concentrate. It's not a very enjoyable way to watch the fight, but and what I was very surprised with, you know, and I am a Golovkin fan, so I was really trying to, and I was aware of the result, but I ended up scoring it quite easily to Golovkin. I was shocked, you know, because I'd seen the last 6 rounds, which I gave 4-2 to Danny Jacobs one way, and then when I watched it the second time, I gave it 3-2 to Golovkin when I was really concentrating.
3-2, what? 1 round even?
1 round even. I gave the 12th round I found even. I couldn't split them. I had 2 draw rounds in this fight. So my ended up score being, you know, and it's a little bit wider than I think, but well, it's interesting. Let me just say the score. I had a 117 to 112 for Golovkin. Now I lost money on Golovkin. I thought Golovkin was going to KO him. So you know, it's not like I had an interest in Golovkin actually win the fight. I don't give a shit. But I was kind of shocked, to be honest with you, that I had scored it that wide, given what people had been saying about it, and also given my impression. And you know, I since then I went and I've looked at the CompuBox scores, and I looked at the judges' scorecards, and the judges' scorecards say with my scorecard, there's not a round where one of them didn't agree with me, if you know what I mean. There wasn't a round where I think I got it completely wrong. And then the other thing I'd say is that, you know, CompuBox, look, Andy Patterson and some of the lads on the Boxing Asylum say that CompuBox is a load of bullshit. Like, I just can't agree with that. That's just completely wrong. And I just know that if you actually do a statistical analysis of whether CompuBox has correlates to actual winning judges' scorecards, there'll be an extremely high correlation. Speaking as a statistician, mathematician, right? So there's definitely something to be taken from CompuBox score, but you know, it's not an exact measure, and it doesn't measure you know other elements of it. But the CompuBox ones, I think, are, you know, they had it even wider for Golovkin than I did, which was interesting. The CompuBox stats had it 118, 110. You know, which is actually it's 118, 109. The CompuBox had it. So I think that, you know, Golovkin landed a lot more punches. He threw a lot more punches. He knocked the guy down. He hurt him probably on 3 occasions in the fight. And I think what happens is in this fight is that Jacobs, people are scoring the fight for Jacobs because he did way better than any of us expected. You know? And I think that's not how you judge an actual. If you're a judge, that's not how you score a fight. You should be scoring each round independently, irrespective of like, do you think, wow, Jacobs is actually doing something here in the 11th or whatever. But, you know, Jacobs, I thought, fought a very good fight. I thought he fought much better than I expected. I think Golovkin was wary of his power. I thought Golovkin looks old. I think Golovkin has lost something. Either he just underperformed or he lost something. I think we've seen the best of Golovkin. I think it's in the past. I think it's a shame none of the guys ever stood up to him when he was in his prime. I think, you know, I was looking at Roy Jones's record. When he hit 35, he did 3 losses in the trot. This was Roy Jones Jr., the greatest fighter in our lifetimes. You know, the guy who was just, you know, an amazing athlete and gone all the way up to heavyweight. At 35, then he hit the skids. You know, I think Golovkin, we've seen the best of him. I think that the odds on all of these other fights should substantially come in. And, you know, I was kind of disappointed in it as a fight, you know, but, you know, I understand why people score it for Jacobs, because I think they're not really score, you know, like it's not a pleasant thing to score a fight properly, you know, to actually concentrate on it. But like, you know, and also the commentary, it must be said, the commentary was diabolical, especially on Box Nation. I saw it live for Box Nation. In the 9th round, Gennady Golovkin hammered the head off Jacobs for the last 30 seconds of that round, had him stumbling from even a jab, and they gave that round to Jacobs. You know, so I think the scoring was diabolical, and I think the commentary is diabolical. And the reason I think you know, we say that the commentary is, we don't give Box Nation the slagging that we give Sky commentary, but I think the thing is, you know, that they have an interest in GGG, selling that GGG versus Saunders fight. They want to make Golovkin look more beatable. So I think they turned, Barry Jones turned into a company man commentary. But, you know, I think it's a kind of, for me, it's an easy to say. I think it's quite a clear win for Golovkin, but it's certainly not an impressive one. I thought Jacobs showed great heart and good technique, and just a disappointing fight.
Good analysis, mate. I hear you saying, you know, that Golovkin potentially is looking old, looking a bit slower, potentially slipping a bit, and his best days are behind him. You know, let's talk some of the fantasy matchups within his sort of division. What about Billy Joe Saunders or James DeGale? Sorry, Billy Joe Saunders or Kush Eubank Jr.? You mentioned that the odds would sift. Would you give those guys an increased chance of beating Golovkin at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. And Canelo. I get them all much, much higher. You know, the Golovkin I was basing my stuff on is a Golovkin basically of the Lemieux fight. And based on what we've seen, is it 2 years ago now? Or how long ago was that fight? Is it 2 years? Let me check.
It's got to be something along that nature, mate. Yeah.
Not far off that, is it? I mean, he's had the Wade fight since that. It's only the Wade fight since that, right?
And Brook.
Oh, and Brook, yeah. So I wouldn't even say it's 2 years. It's maybe a year and a half ago. But I mean, I agree, and I've got to say that, like, this is kind of like what I meant as well. Like, if I'm going to score a fight, I usually like watch it and then watch it again and score it the second time, because, like you're saying, it's not easy to do both at the same time. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They just go, "Oh, I think he did better in that round," and they score it like that, and they're not actually looking who's landing more and what's actually going on. You know.
Yeah, like some of those. It's about 18 months ago. I was in when that Lemieux fight. But you know, some of those like just the punch stats there, like in some of those rounds, like people were like giving Danny Jacobs the first 3 rounds, right? The first round on CompuBox was 9 for punches landed for Golovkin and 8 for Jacobs. You know, you can't split that. I actually had scored a draw when I watched it, scored it properly. The next 2 was 10 versus 6 in Golovkin's favor. The third one, 14 versus 12 in Golovkin's favor. Now they're quite even rounds, but they're certainly, you'd have to give every round to Jacobs where he under punched against Golovkin. I thought Golovkin had the cleaner work as well. But then you've got, and even some of the last rounds, that I scored for Jacobs, the CompuBox or gave a draw. Like say for example, the 12th round had 31 punches landed for Golovkin versus 15 for Jacobs. I give that a draw round, but CompuBox is saying he's landed twice, and it's not like 2 versus 4 punches. It's 31 versus 15. So like the CompuBox are interesting, and anybody who says that CompuBox is rubbish, doesn't know what they're talking about, because there's just going to be a statistical correlation, a very, very strong one between CompuBox and what would be good judging. So, not to say that it's perfect, but there is a very strong signal there between them two. Like I would advise people to, I don't advise them because it's kind of boring, to be honest with you. But like, I think they'd be surprised if they actually went to try and score that properly. This is one of the first fights I've actually done that in years, to be honest with you, because I don't enjoy doing it.
Tom, just before we move on from Golovkin, so you mentioned you'd give some of the other contenders an increased chance. Of the three of them, Canelo, Eubank, Billy Joe, who do you think's got the highest chance of being victorious? And, if Billy Joe is next, how big a chance do you rate him?
I give Canelo the biggest chance. I think Canelo is the most fundamentally sound. He's got good defense. His defense has improved a lot. He's a bit flat-footed, but he throws in combination. We've seen Golovkin doesn't like combination throwers. He tends to shell up, and now he used to throw he used to punch with the punchers. But like if he respects Canelo's punching power, which is quite likely, he'll actually probably shell up and reset and go backwards. So those flashy combinations, Canelo will do well with them, and Canelo's a good body puncher, and he's good defensively. So I make that a much, much closer fight. And to be honest with you, I didn't think I'd hear myself saying this now, but I think in the next 12 months, if GGG fights top-level fighters for the next 3 or 4 fights, he's going to lose one. That's the way I feel about it. I make Canelo Golovkin now. You gotta think about Canelo's judges as well. That's going to be a passing of the torch fight, I think, when it does get made. So I think I make that much, much closer, like a 60-40 fight now. I used to have it like an 80-20. Billy Joe Saunders will be able to box. He's got the best boxing ability, but I don't think GGG will respect his power, and I think he might just go through him, run through him. So I can see that Billy Joe might be able. I don't know if Billy Joe will be able to implement what Danny Jacobs did because he doesn't have his power. And Billy Joe Saunders looked absolutely rubbish in his last fight, and who knows what kind of state he's going to be in if he does fight GGG. So maybe you give him 20%. Chris Eubank Jr., that's an interesting one because he's so flawed, but he's got an engine, and Golovkin is starting to look older. And he does punch in combination. So I'd probably give him like a 25% chance now. I think if he fights those 3 fighters, GGG, I expect GGG to lose one of them. Interesting.
Yeah. It does look like he's potentially losing a step. I mean, one thing I will say, I agree with Paul that this was in no way a robbery because it was too close to be a robbery. But as you guys know, if you saw my post-fight video, I actually did score the fight to Jacobs, and I stand by that. But I did have it wafer thin. I had it 114, 113, and could happily accept the other score the other way around. But let's move it on.
I've got one question for you, a quick one, Tom. Yeah. Like, when was the last time you saw a fight where one guy got knocked down and he also got hurt badly, well, fairly hurt twice in 2 other rounds, and got outlanded by outlanded by 30-40%, and you get the decision against him?
Well, I don't know. The one that springs to mind, and it's funny because the decision didn't strictly go for him, but it half went for him, is potentially James DeGale versus Badu Jack. But yeah, I take your point in that it's a very.
But Badu Jack got knocked down, and James DeGale. I don't think the punch stats were dominant. Landed punch stats were that dominant, one versus the other.
I don't know the specific punch stats. I know there's a stat doing the rounds that James DeGale landed 2 jabs the entire fight, or something ridiculous.
Yeah, four out of 160.
Yeah, something like that. So, but yeah, no, I take your point. And I couldn't complain with a Golovkin win. If you had it to Golovkin, I'm not saying you're wrong. It's very, very close.
Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying if you have it for Jacobs, you were wrong. No, I'm joking.
I appreciate that, but you
I was going to say that. When you described that, you went, so when was the last time? What you described was like never, because what you described was the winning fighter. Like in that case, like the fighter has won. Like if he's landed more. Do you know what I mean?
Knocked the other guy down and hurt him 2 other times. Like I think people are confusing like what was a very good performance and an unexpected performance by Jacobs with actually what the score of the fight should be.
Yeah, but that's not how you score boxing, is it? I mean, you score.
I think people based on. Sorry, Gossip, you go on. Sorry.
You score boxing based on 12 individual rounds, and whilst I'm not saying it happened in this instance, it's perfectly possible to lose a round and hurt the opponent. And I think sometimes that is what happens, that one fighter wins rounds in a very dominant fashion, whereas another fighter sneaks rounds by 1%. And if the other fighter sneaks enough rounds by 1%, they win the fight, regardless. It's a bizarre scoring system we have. The scoring system is so bizarre that it's not as simple as who scores the most clean shots. I mean, you can score the most clean shots and lose the round. Whether that's right, whether that's wrong, whether we like it, whether we don't, that is the case. So I take your point that generally, if someone's getting dropped, if someone's getting hurt, if someone's getting outlanded, if those 3 things line up 90 times out of 100, they're going to lose the fight. But due to the scoring system we have, it's not foolproof.
I know that, yeah. I know and agree, and I'm not trying to be an asshole about it, but I think that if you actually go and look and score that fight again in a kind of a scorey way instead of a watching it way, I think that you would have to give, I just think, but looking at the statistics, you have to give every single close round to Jacobs to give him that fight.
Yeah, I think you are right in the sense that if you are scoring the fight for Jacobs, there is minimal margin for error, if you like, and if you maybe edge 1 or 2 of the close rounds to Golovkin, and I did edge the close rounds to Jacobs, I must admit, but I do acknowledge that in some of the rounds that could have gone either way, if I had given them to Golovkin would have won the fight on my card, definitely. But there you go. Let's move it on. Let's go back to Paul. And let's bring in Roman Gonzalez, who was beaten at the weekend by Rungvisai. And it was a very, very, very good fight, I would suggest. Again, a controversial fight in terms of the scoring. Paul, did you see the fight? And if you did, who do you think won?
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to say this just now when you were talking about the Golovkin fight. I'd be interested to hear whether you scored that fight as well and who you had been in it, because I watched. Yeah, I mean, I saw the fight and then I scored it again afterwards as well, and I thought Roman Gonzalez won the fight quite clearly. I thought it was a really good fight. But I thought Roman Gonzalez won the fight clearly. I mean, the Thai guy was just bigger. He just came forward very flat-footed and threw single shots. But Roman Gonzalez was peppering him. I think the judges were swayed by a couple of things. I thought the guy was bigger than him, and he was kind of like muscling him, out strengthening him. Plus, Roman Gonzalez looked like he'd been in a war, mainly because he'd been headbutted about 3 or 4 times. I mean, he did look like busted up, but he was busted up with illegal headbutts. And so I was kind of like, I didn't like that at all. I didn't, I think if, a guy is a champion, and I know he'd only just moved up to that weight and become champion, but he was a guy that had been champion at one weight or another for a long time. For a guy to just come in and I don't think Srisaket Rungvisai did anywhere near enough to win that fight, to win that title off of him. I really don't. I thought it was a very, very poor decision. I'm interested to see what other people thought, but I thought it was a very poor decision.
So on that particular fight, I did exactly what Irish Tom described, and I watched the fight more just to watch the fight as opposed to watch the fight to score. And I think the reason behind that is because I actually watched these fights the day after. So I started with Golovkin-Jacobs, and with Golovkin-Jacobs, I sat down, pen and paper, and tried to score it, scientifically. And I think I was too worn out to do that by the time we got to Gonzalez-Rungvisai. I found some of those fights, some of the rounds, very, very tough, I would imagine, to score, even though I'm admitting I didn't properly score it in that fight. My overall impression, having watched the fight, is that Rungvisai did do enough to win it. And
did or didn't?
Did. And although it was a very close fight, and I imagine it would be a nightmare fight to score had I scored it, my instinct was that Rungvisai did enough. I do agree with your point that the use of the head and the blood, and also the obvious, what appeared to me to be an obvious power advantage in Rungvisai's favour, probably did sway the judges. And I appreciate that Gonzalez did do some very, very good work that maybe went unrecognised. But I did feel that Rungvisai did enough. And again, it's similar to a point that Iris Tom made. Rungvisai dropped Gonzalez heavily in the first round. Rungvisai landed the harder punches. He maybe didn't land the better punches technically, but he landed the harder punches. Rungvisai was on the front foot. Rungvisai was bringing the aggression for most of the fight. And, I think it's one of those where it would have been hard for Gonzalez to get the decision when you factor in all of those considerations, I guess.
I mean, I don't think he dropped heavily. It was a body shot, and Gonzalez was off balance. I mean, I think the body shot did hurt him because he kind of like he waited for about 7-8 seconds to get up. But I don't know. I don't think he was heavily dropped. I think the body shot hurt him a little bit, but it was more the fact that he was off balance. I mean, it was a legitimate knockdown, without any doubt. But I just thought, what I saw was like Rungvisai landing single shots and then getting absolutely peppered with combinations from Gonzalez. I thought. I mean, I don't know. I thought he won the fight quite clearly, but yeah. I mean, it's
UD, wasn't it? It was all three judges went in favour of Rungvisai, did they? Why have I got that wrong?
No, I think it was a split decision.
Two had it 115, 113, I think, and one had a draw. Wasn't that it?
Yeah,
that's right, Tom. Yeah, so it was by the narrowest of margin that we could possibly have had then. I mean, if it had been 1 point closer, it would have actually been a draw. So, clearly it was a big, close fight.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, and this is the problem I've got with people screaming robbery in cases like this or the Triple G fight. If somebody is clearly beating the shit out of the other person, and it's like clearly like a 117, 111 job, and it goes the other way, then yeah, that's a robbery. In a razor close fight like that, I just don't think you can call it a robbery. You can say, okay, I think the other guy deserves to win, but I think people are crying about robbery too readily and unnecessarily, in my view.
Yeah, I agree. Tom, let's go over to yourself on this one, mate. Your take on the fight, and who did you have winning it?
Well, I didn't watch it like the way I watched the GGG fight. I just watched it as a fan, and I had it a draw.
Okay.
So I can't. I think it could easily go either way. Ivan, What's his name? Oh, Jesus, I had his name here. I'm going to say this one properly because everybody fucking doesn't pronounce this. Wisaksil Wangek Shrishakhet Sorungvasai. He was.
Okay. I'm glad you pronounced that properly because everyone else messes it up.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
He actually had two names. That Wisakil Wanget was his birth name. Because a friend of mine who's actually listening, he'll be listening, a friend of mine in Switzerland goes to Thailand quite a lot. And we were talking about like whether, about the name and stuff. And like, yeah, apparently that's his birth name and he fights under Srisaket Surin Vizai. So
they're great names. They're really class names.
Fantastic, yeah.
But I Drew, look, I think that well, look, I didn't like your video, Tom. I'm going to slate you for your video, to be honest. But you were slagging off Roman Gonzalez. But, I think that he's too old, and I think he's fighting at a way too high. And that guy...
He's 29, isn't he?
Sorry? Say again?
He's in his 20s still.
He's 30, isn't he?
Oh, I thought he was a bit younger than that. But, okay, yeah, I'll Google it. He's 29.
Yeah, but he's 30.
So I don't know if that's too old.
The more, I don't think he's too old. I think the more important point is he's too small. I think that Rung Vizai was a natural. Is it 135?
No,
no, it's 115.
115. Sorry, yeah. 115. Yeah. That Rung Vizai was a natural 115.
Massive.
Fighter.
He looked like Manny fucking Pacquiao, those legs on him.
Huge, and he was so much bigger than. I don't think Roman Gonzalez. I mean, you've only got to look at the Quadras fight to see that Gonzalez. I think Gonzalez's skill set is like on a different level to both of these guys, but he struggled in both fights, and that's because he's at the wrong weight. I don't think he should have moved up.
See, I'm not. I clearly the guy would be better at the weight class below. I think that's something we can all agree on. And clearly he is a very, very, very good fighter. However, were you guys not surprised by some of the lack of fundamentals from Gonzalez in this fight? I mean, maybe you guys have seen more of him than I have, so maybe you were less taken aback than I was. I was amazed. No jab. There was no lateral movement. There was very little attempt at defense. I was expecting to see a far more accomplished boxing performance here.
I mean, the thing is, one thing I will say, and like I saw your video as well, and I've got to take a little bit of an issue with it as well, but maybe for a different reason. You were saying sort of like, now I agree that he's not number one pound for pound. I do agree that. I don't think you can put him number one pound for pound. But you were kind of saying in your video, because you've not heard of a lot of his opponents, you just simply cannot have him in the pound for pound list because you haven't heard any of his opponents. In the same breath, you said you don't really follow those weight divisions. So, like, if you followed the weight divisions, you'd know who the opponents were. So you're kind of like contradicted yourself there a little bit, or not contradicted yourself, but kind of counteracted what you were saying a little bit.
That's a fair point. I think maybe I don't recall expressing it in that fashion, but I'm sure if you're saying I did, I'm sure I did. But maybe a more articulate way of phrasing it would be that I just don't believe he has beaten fighters who are recognised as fellow pound for pound level fighters. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. I don't believe he has run through the elite of sport to be considered a very, very top pound for pound fighter.
But I think many pound for pound fighters haven't beaten other pound for pound fighters. In actual fact, it's a rarity. You look at somebody like Mikey Garcia. Who has he beat?
Well, Mikey Garcia wouldn't be nowhere near the top of the pound for pound list.
I think he's top five. I think he's probably in most people's top five.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen Mikey Garcia included in anyone's pound for pound list. I don't think I've seen his name once. Yeah. I think the top pound for pound guys who are genuine.
Now, come on, gossip. Now you got to be joking me. He was in the pound for pound before he took his break.
Oh, I very possible. I can't. The truth is, Tom, I don't remember. But certainly now, I think very few and far between anyone would have Mikey Garcia in their top five.
Top 10?
I couldn't answer that immediately because I don't have a bank of the fighters in my head who I can compare him to. But I'd be doubtful that I'd have him top 10. Doubtful.
But say somebody like Lomachenko, he's probably fought nobody in the pound for pound. Definitely.
I actually said in the video I did yesterday. I said I said Roman Gonzalez isn't a top pound for pound, top 3 pound for pound fighter is what I said. And I
agree with you.
I said, and for the same reason, I wouldn't have Vasyl Lomachenko, Gennady Golovkin, or Guillermo Rigondeaux. I actually said for exactly the same reason, and to remain totally consistent.
That's top. That's top 3 though. And the other thing I'd say is that, like, you made a case before for Vladimir Klitschko being the top for pound fighter in the world at the time. Tyson Fury bet him, but Vladimir Klitschko at that point has fought, apart from David Haye, and if you want to count Povetkin, he fought a load of people that were vegetables in a heavyweight division that was extremely thin. Now, I'd say
I think you have, and this is my personal opinion, I think heavyweight is ever so slightly different. And I think the reason heavyweight is different is there is no opportunity to fight people in other weight classes. Whereas for a guy like Andre Ward or Manny Pacquiao or Roman Gonzalez, that opportunity has existed. I mean, to put it simply, Vladimir Klitschko never had the option to fight someone outside of his weight class. It just wasn't a possibility.
I know, but we're talking about, so like, and also when we go and we talk about what makes a pound for pound fighter, and we talk about, in that video you talked about, are they displaying the jab, or displaying back foot movement, are they able to change it up and adapt? Let's look at lots of fighters that have been in the pound for pound. Manny Pacquiao, for example, has never displayed a back foot game in his career. You don't have to be a slick black American style to make it in the pound for pound. As well as that, somebody like Vladimir Klitschko has never showed a come forward front foot game. He showed a simple one-dimensional jab right hand, and that's been, according to you, that's got him into pound for pound, right? But if you look at, say, Gonzalez is displaying what is an elite come forward aggressive style. And, the fact that he's not, Terence Crawford in the back foot doesn't mean he can't be a pound for pound fighter. The other thing,
he's not pound for pound because of his resume. Pound for pound for me is something that you have to base on resume, and he's not pound for pound by that. What amazed me was not only does he not have the resume, in my opinion, but he also just doesn't have the skill set. I mean, it's a fair comment you make that someone can be a pound for pound number 1 by possessing an elite offensive game. But this guy didn't exactly show an elite defensive game. I mean, would you have included Rungvisai in your pound for pound top 500 prior to this fight? And I thought he was being outboxed and beaten up by Rungvisai.
Yeah, but we have to look at what it is like. Let's look at what his style is like. He is a very aggressive front foot fighter. Now you say he doesn't have much defensive skill. I say the opposite. I say that when he is in the pocket and he's throwing, he's doing an awful lot of bobbing and weaving, and he's able to actually sit there in the pocket with a guy throwing punches at him, and he's deflecting a lot of them. Okay, that doesn't mean he's not getting caught, but it means that, if you go and you slow down a lot of those movements, you'll see where he's taking shots on his arms, he's bending, he's dipping, and he's managing to attack. He defends in the pocket.
Well, you say that, but then you scored the fight a draw.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that, I think he's...
That's strong.
Yeah, but I think, look, you look at, say, for example, let's look at Floyd Mayweather versus Maidana, right? Maidana won, a close fight, right? Maidana is a great fighter, right? But he's no elite fighter. He's a really hard, tough guy. He gave Floyd Mayweather, the slickest boxer we've seen in the last decade, he gave him conniptions. Okay, so and who would have said that Maidana is pound for pound number 1 now because he ran close with Floyd, or number 2? Nobody.
It's not a fair comparison because we all scored that.
Why not?
We all scored that fight to Floyd. Floyd never got
7-5, but we scored 5 rounds. If Floyd is this amazingly elite defensive boxer, how come he got his arse handed to him for many rounds in that fight?
true, but we scored the fight to Floyd. Floyd never got dropped. At least I don't recall him getting dropped. I'm sure he didn't. And Floyd did exactly what you'd expect an elite boxer to do in that fight, which is make the adjustment. He started badly. He lost a lot of early rounds. He made the adjustments and eventually used his boxing fundamentals to secure a victory. It wasn't Floyd's best performance, but what Floyd has on his resume is 20 other world title names and the associated performances.
Let's get to that for a second, but let's just keep on this thing. Like, say for example, Gonzalez. Now I scored it a draw, right? But say Gonzalez was fighting a guy that was clearly a lot larger than him. He looked clearly a weight division above him. Floyd was fighting a guy coming up for 140.
Maidana was clearly bigger than Floyd, though, wasn't he?
I mean, one thing.
I don't think he was clearly bigger than Floyd. I think they were of a similar size.
Tom, can I ask?
Remember, Maidana was fighting at 140 when Floyd was fighting at 147.
BG, let me ask you something. Like in that video, you said like Roman Gonzalez hasn't fought the names to place him in the pound for pound list. Who would you have liked to have seen him fight? Like, which names in those divisions could he fight that would make you think he was pound for pound?
Paul, unfortunately, the answer to that is there probably isn't a name that would make me think he's pound for pound number one, because quite at present we have guys active in the sport like Andre Ward and Manny Pacquiao. So is there a name that Roman Gonzalez could go out and beat and I'd have him at number one? No. It's actually the same for Golovkin. You know, I've got nothing against Golovkin. I rate Golovkin. And it's not his fault that he hasn't had an opportunity to get in one of these big fights. You know, nothing against Golovkin that he hasn't fought Canelo. Nothing against Golovkin he didn't fight Martinez or, you know, Cotto. Nothing against that. But the fact he didn't take those fights because he wasn't able to has meant he wasn't, you know, he's been unable to get that position within the sport. You know, I'm not saying that Gonzalez isn't an elite world championship. I'm saying potentially through no fault of his own, he is not rated as a pound for pound number one or even a top three fighter. And having seen some of the attributes or lack of attributes he showed in this fight, I'm even more skeptical.
I know, but the thing is, do you not see that, like the fact that you've just said, like there probably isn't a name that he could fight that would make him pound for pound? It's what you're essentially doing is ruling out anybody from the lower weight classes as ever being pound for pound, because none of them can ever fight anybody that you've heard of, so they can't ever be in the pound for pound list. So, I mean, what does the pound for pound list actually mean if it's only divisions in which you know fighters?
That's a good point. Like, I got to agree with Paul, and I'm not saying that I know them, right? But I do know that he's been matched very tough. I thought he lost the quarters, but I think he's fighting too high a weight division. Like, I don't know another, an extreme aggressive fighter like a Golovkin when he's not doing a Jacobs or a Lemieux performance, a guy who comes forward with a massive aggression, who's able to in that style, who's able to like fight way above his weight and beat guys. You know,
let me just come back on Paul's point quickly there, like if I can, because to an extent, Paul, I agree with your point. You know, and it's made fairly. But the reason that I don't have the depth of knowledge in these weight divisions is, I'll tell you the exact reason, is that this Rungvisai, I've spoken to many people who know, and they are saying that he was widely considered a top 5 fighter within his division, potentially even higher than that. You know, this Rungvisai was a real deal within the weight division of super flyweight prior to this matchup. And if you'll have heard the video I did yesterday, you'll have made this point. But this guy's resume, it's nothing sort of farcical.
Yeah.
You know, it is an absolute joke. And this is potentially why that I don't have the names in that division and why I don't have the interest in that division. Because a guy is widely regarded as a top 5 fighter in that division, having fought 13 debutants and 10 fighters on the bounce with a losing record. So, but, you know, if that was happening at middleweight, I wouldn't have any interest in the middleweights. You know, it's the lack of depth.
But Tom, that's
You know,
a function of what
come up this weekend. That I mean, I doubt you would have heard of that guy before this weekend. And if we talk about Roman Gonzalez, he hasn't got a record like that. If you look at his record's not like that. I mean, he's fought guys like Fuentes, like Estrada, Juan Francisco Estrada. He's fought a lot of really decent fighters, and that actually, like, I agree that I don't think he is. I think putting him at number one is ridiculous, but just to essentially rule out lower weight fighters because you don't know the fighters in the league, I just don't agree with. That's all.
Tom, I've got something to say, like, as well as, like, you know, like you're comparing like what happens in Thailand with, say, what happens over here. Like, for example, like you know that in his debut, Wisaksil Wangek Srisaket Sorumvisai, in his debut, he took on a world challenger in his debut. That was his debut fight. He fought a guy who lost in a unanimous decision for the world championship. Okay, so in Thailand, they matched them just fucking bizarrely.
Yeah, well, I'm not actually comparing what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in the UK. What I'm comparing is what's happening in this weight division compared to the more mainstream.
Okay, well, let's compare it to somebody, say, for example, like a Callum Smith, right? Who's fighting these bums who come over. I don't like using the word bum. Let me say that again. Fighting these gym fighters from Hungary with 13-6 records. Could be fighting like 12-year-olds in those fights for all anybody knows how good they are, right? Versus
Smith, who just fought a guy at 2-34 or
2-34. I know that's a pretty exceptional one, but
and the guy took in the distance.
We'll come on to Liam. I mean, the Liam Smith one is an interesting point, but
that is
Tom,
look, but say Callum Smith, right?
I'm not saying Callum Smith's fought a who's who of boxing names. Callum Smith has fought Christopher Abrasse, 23-3. Rocky Fielding, 21-0. Hadilla Mohammadi, 20-3. I remember earlier on in his career, he fought Nikolai Sesloka, who I believe may have been a world title challenger at some point. Prior to Gonzalez, this Rungvisai fought a debutant, at 12-19, a 3-5. You know, need I continue? I mean, this is a new level of bad. I don't know if I have seen a world title challenger with this bad a padded record ever.
But you know, a lot of times these guys, when these guys that they're fighting in these debutants in Thailand, an awful lot of times these guys are already Thai kickboxers, and they're just changing over to fight in this. It's not like they're coming in and they've got no fighting capability. And also they just match them, you know, it is bizarre. They put two debutants in against world-class fighters. But similarly, he debuted against a guy who just went unanimous decision loss. So it's not like with like. That's all I'm trying to say. Yeah, I know what you're saying, that these lower classes don't have the same numbers as the higher classes. But, like, you know, that guy Wisaksil Wangeg Shrisuket Sor Rungvisai, you know, he is a talent. You know, he might be crude, but he is a puncher, and he's built like a tank for his weight division. And he's fighting a guy who's...
He's nothing. He's nothing special, this guy. He was solid. He was likable. He was a good fighter. He put in a very good performance. But looking at that guy, that was not an elite fighter. That was a guy with very limited technique. He appeared to me to be very stiff, very flat-footed, very rudimentary in his approach. You know, a guy who, you know, I would really think an elite boxer would take that guy to school. You know,
well, here
he was. Did
good. You think Quadras
not elite?
What about Quadras? Did you think Quadras was a good fighter?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he went like it was 8 rounds, and that was stopped on a cut, and he was starting to smash up Quadras, and Quadras got out of jail with that. Basically, he was on the way to beating Quadras. And we think Quadras is a good fighter. Some guys are crude. That doesn't mean they're not good.
To be honest, this is just reinforcing my point about the lack of depth in this division. You know, like if a guy like Rungvisai was able to cause that much problem to the number 1 and number 2 in the division, that would be the equivalent of someone who's a very, very talented fighter, but someone who's very rudimentary. Let me try and think of an example.
Maidana.
Yeah, maybe
Maidana?
Be like a guy like Marcus Maidana, I don't know, beating Floyd Mayweather on points, and then a guy like Marcus Maidana looking like he was going to destroy Manny Pacquiao before getting stopped on a cut. You know, look, Rungvisai is not a bad fighter. I'm not suggesting he is. But he is not an elite fighter. He is a fighter who look. If Floyd Mayweather was shrunk down to a super flyweight, Floyd Mayweather would have taken him to school. Let's have it right.
But Floyd Mayweather did not take Maidana to school. Let's get that right. And they're at equivalent stages in their careers. You know, these small guys are finished by the time they're 30, you know. And so we got to take that into account. And he's fighting above his weight class. The other thing I'd say to you, you know, we're slagging off, say, for example, I don't know how you can say one guy's a good fighter and then slag the guy who nearly beat him up, you know. And, you know, I just don't understand how that can happen. Whether he's not the style of fighter you like, that doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. Look, I don't like...
He is a very, very good fighter. What he clearly isn't is an elite fighter. I mean, just watch the tape. Like, this is not an elite fighter.
I know, I'm not saying he's an elite fighter, but just saying that you don't have to be elite like pound for pound to beat a pound for pound guy. Here, all I'm going to do, I'm going to shut up after I say this one because... we're after giving you an awful razzing here, gossip. But like, here's the top 10 right on BoxRec from the super flyweight division. This is a good division. Whether we could compare it to the middleweight division or something if you want, or the super middleweight division, who we talk about a lot, or the light heavyweight division. Here's the top 10. With Saxil Wangek, then we have Roman Gonzalez. Then you've got Noya Inoue. Then we got Juan Francisco Estrada. Then we got Carlos Cuadras. Then we got Caliafai. We got Casimiro. Jerwin and Cajas. I don't know him, I must say. Luis Concepcion. He's the guy who just lost to... got robbed. And wait, I'm not finished yet. That's 9. And then number 10 is... you dirty hoover machine. At number 10 is Brian Valoria. Right, so that to me, like, is as good a top 10 in that division as most divisions.
And I'll tell you what else, out of that top 10, Roman Gonzalez has fought at least 4 of that. He's fought Valoria, he's fought Cuadras, he's fought Estrada, and he's fought who was it you said it was Rungvisai. He's fought about 5 of them. So, like, you know, how many people in kind of like the say the super middleweight division or the welterweight division have fought 5 or 6 out of their own top 10?
Well, these guys have to fight each other, Paul, because there isn't any money in that division whatsoever. So unless they fought each other, you know, they wouldn't even.
But that doesn't. But that doesn't matter if they're forced to fight each other. They have fought each other, and he's done well against them.
They fought each other, but the weakness of this division is actually shown by the point that you've just made, Tom. So you've just read out the top 10 of that division, and you've got Caliafai at number 6, and Caliafai's got 1 win on his resume, which is against the number 9, Luis Concepcion. And, you know, what a woeful, embarrassing performance that was by Luis Concepcion. You know, Caliafai won pretty much every round at an absolute canter. I mean, how Luis Concepcion can be considered top 10 in that division, given how poor his performance was in that fight, is actually remarkable. You know, if a fighter who's capable of putting in that poor a performance is rated top 10, it's telling you something very, very strong about the lack of depth in that division.
I actually thought I was really good that night, more than Concepcion being bad. But
if you want to play it
embarrassing.
Tom, if we want to play that game, let's look at one that we think is a good division, like the lightweight division. Okay, you got Rances Barthelemy, Mikey Garcia, Robert Easter Jr., Jorge Linares, Terry Flanagan, Richard Comey, Mikey Bay, Lou Campbell, Anthony Crolla, Dennis Shafikov. Like, who the hell has Mikey Bay ever bet? Richard Comey. Who's the best fighter Richard Comey ever bet? He's never beaten anybody. Who's the best fighter Robert Easter Jr. has ever bet? He's only ever beaten Richard Comey. Dennis Shafikov. The only person he's ever bet is Richard Comey. You know, like, and that's supposed to be, number 11 is Petrov. who we're slagging Terry Flanagan for fighting. It's not like that division, which we think is a good division, is stacked. Maybe it's a little bit more stacked, but I think we're just being harsh. We're just being harsh because we don't know these guys, and I don't know them either. I just think we've got a guy like Gonzalez who's gone up from 105, 108, 112, and he's in his fourth division, and he fights a style that's not suited to going through the weights. It's like having Marvin Hagler going up to light heavyweight. It's that type of style. It's not going to last. So Marvin Hagler was an all-time great, but he wasn't like a back foot boxer. So I just think that, we shouldn't be giving one style an advantage over another. It's like the reason why Golovkin's top 10 pound for pound fighter is because he's really good in that weight division. If Golovkin went up to light heavyweight, he gets splattered, but that doesn't mean he's not a top 10.
Yeah, Golovkin is a top 10 pound for pound fighter, and Roman Gonzalez probably is a top 10 pound for pound fighter. He probably is. But here's my issue. Not only, is the resume not there. We've talked about Rungvisai. You also said you picked Quadras. You were picking Quadras to beat him in that fight. The issue for me is the performance in there was just so lacking. And I appreciate you saying that he doesn't have the style to move up through weight classes. But I thought this was relatively basic stuff. I thought this was stuff that, a lot of amateur boxers would know. I mean, how many guys, if I told you were fighting a guy who was a bigger guy than you, who was a harder puncher than you, who was going to come forward all night and try and sit on your chest and close the gap, what would be the basic instructions you would give? What would be the basic instructions you'd give? And this Gonzalez seemed to miss all of the obvious points. I mean, whether he just didn't realize it, whether he got sucked into being a macho man, whether he didn't have any sort of tactical versatility whatsoever. It's bizarre to me.
Well, I mean, what the advice you'd give him would be to fight on the back foot, and Roman Gonzalez can't fight on the back foot. That's fair enough. If you want to make that point, he can't fight on the back foot. No, he can't.
What about jab? Can he jab?
He hasn't got. He doesn't use his jab very much at all.
Here we go. We got a fighter who can't fight on the back foot. We've got a fighter who can't throw a jab, and a few quotes from the Box Nation commentary team. They call him a complete fighter.
Don't mind them lads. Yeah, don't mind them lads.
They call him an all-time great, and this is common. That sort of language is very, very common.
He's an all-time great for the low divisions. Of course, he is going to be an all-time great for the low divisions. Why not?
Well, Paul's just said, and I agree with him, that the guy can't fight on the back foot, and he's just said that he can't throw a jab. And this is a guy.
No, hold on. I didn't say he can't throw a jab. I said he doesn't use his jab much. He can throw a jab, but he doesn't use his jab much. His style of fighting is close up and going forward and attack. And that's a style just the same as
Mike Tyson. Like, whoever says Mike Tyson is not a good fighter because he can't fight in the back foot.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. They're different styles, and like his style is very good. The thing is, there, Gossip, if he hadn't got cut and he hadn't got like splattered with headbutts, I think most of them were accidental. I don't think there was much malice in them. And I must say, I've never seen like two fighters, like especially the Thai guy, trying to nearly hug his opponent in a nice way at the end of every round. It was like he was delighted to be there. But it was very odd. But what was I saying? I don't know. It's gone. Fuck it.
What do you guys? Where do you guys have Rungvisai on your pound for pound list? Then I'm presuming definite top 3.
Oh man, like no one's Tom. Nobody's saying no. Well, I mean,
I'm being pedantic, obviously, Paul. But no, serious question. I mean, where would you have Rungvisai on your pound for pound?
It wouldn't be on the pound for pound list. You would just because you beat a pound for pound guy doesn't put your pound for pound list. Simple as that.
No.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure. Would you agree that he'd be above Roman Gonzalez or not?
No, he's below him. Just because you lose to a guy doesn't mean you're a better fighter than him, or you're a worse fighter than him.
Interesting. I enjoyed the debate, guys. I do.
No, you didn't.
It wasn't a debate. It was a hiding.
It was a hiding, I agree.
I'm joking. We ganged up.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, clearly it's one we'll have to agree to disagree on. I hear Roman Gonzalez is already planning a comeback fight against a guy who's beaten 30 debutants. Yeah, we'll see if he's able to recover his form. But anyway, yeah, you guys are right. We should move it on. I'll rattle through some other boxing results quite quickly. Andy Lee returns, wins on points. Liam Smith has a secret 4-rounder. We'll come on to that one, actually, because that's interesting. Marius Wok beat Erkan Tepa. Alexander Dimitrenko knocked out Adrian Granat. Amir Mansour outpointed Travis Kaufman. David Lemieux horrifically knocked out Curtis Stevens. Andrade beat Jack Kulkai. And Isaac Lowe versus Dennis Seelan was a technical draw due to a clash of heads, which led to a cut. Paul, let's start with you. Anything notable about those results you want to go into?
Sorry, I was reading the thingy. Say some of them again, mate.
Okay. Andy Lee returns. Liam Smith has a secret 4-rounder. Wok beats Tepa. Dimitrenko beats Granat. Mansour beats Kaufman. Lemieux beats Curtis Stevens. Andrade beats Kulkai. And Isaac Lowe versus Dennis Seelan is a technical draw.
Yeah. What the fuck was Liam Smith doing? Why? Just why? I mean, right before. I mean, I think Liam Williams is going to beat him. You know, but right before this fight, he decides to go to what seems to be like a fucking little hall in Spain to fight some guy with a 2-34 record, 34 losses or whatever. I mean, like, can anybody explain what the possible reason for that? I mean,
well, very interestingly, I can, because Joe Gallagher has commented on it today.
Oh,
Joe Gallagher has said the fight was a genuine fight because Liam Smith wanted to get some rounds in against a bigger guy than him, who was very, very durable. Prior to the Canelo fight, he was cut, so didn't have much sparring, and he's been inactive. So they said they needed to take a fight 3 or 4 weeks prior to the Liam Williams fight, effectively to shake off ring rust and get some more experience.
Yeah, and as well as that, and somebody's just put it in the chat, and I remember either reading this or hearing about it the other day as well. Because Liam Smith just come off a loss, didn't he, to Canelo? You can't fight for a title having come off a loss or whatever, so he needed a win.
Yeah, well, the suggestion is Canelo will vacate the belt, so there's an opportunity potentially to make Liam Smith versus Liam Williams for the interim WBO, you know, they'll need to get a win. So I think that's the probable reason, is they needed to get an easy win under the belt in order to fight for that interim title should it become available. But yeah, Joe Gallagher denied that completely and went on the suggestion that this was a completely genuine fight and, you know, a test that Liam Smith needed, which it seemed insincere to me, Paul.
Yeah, it would seem bizarre that the test you would need would be a 4-rounder in Spain against a guy with a 4-32 record. I mean, like, that's some test, isn't it? I mean, yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's clearly probably the reason the guy in the chat put. Yeah, I mean, it just struck me as really bizarre, like secret fight and that. Like, yeah. Andy Lee, I didn't really see. I saw a couple of bits and bobs of the highlights and that. He looked quite sharp in what I saw, but as I said, didn't see the whole fight. Granat, I never really rated to start with. I thought he was very, very open, very flat-footed. I still didn't think Dimitrenko would beat him, but he kind of walked onto a shot and never really recovered from it in the first round, Granat. He was kind of like... I can remember, as that fight started, I thought Granat's going to get caught. He was just like his left hand was so low, and he just looked wide open. And yeah, as I say, he walked onto a shot, never recovered. I was glad Tepa lost because I hate drug cheats. He's just clearly no good, and was only ever good because he was steroided out up to the gills. Since he's stopped, since he's been caught and whatnot, and he's been tested and everything, he's looked diabolical every time he's been out. So the only fight I didn't see was Andrade Corke. So I mean, I guess maybe I don't know if Iris saw that.
I think Iris did see that from memory. Iris, you might be on mute, mate.
Sorry, yeah, I did see it, Jeff.
Yeah.
I think that is definitely the worst commentary performance I've ever heard in a boxing fight in my life. I know I might have said this before, and I might be somewhat hyperbolic in nature, but that was quite staggeringly bad analysis. At one stage, Andrade, I think like in the 9th round, he absolutely boxed the ears off Culcahy and must have hit him 50 times in the round and got caught twice. And Darren Barker said, I think that was a good round for Culcahy there. I give that one to him. And he was just following around the ring, getting absolutely peppered. I mean, Darren Barker, they need, like, he is the worst commentator I've ever heard. He doesn't even say he doesn't give any insight at all. You might as well have my mother talking about boxing. I swear to God, like, because he offers no insight. How can a professional boxer have such little idea of how to explain what's going on to a person? My God, terrible. Your man, I thought Andrade, though, won that fight very easy. Again, I don't know how people are scoring these fights, because Culcahy was plodding around the ring and he would have moments of success, but he was just getting outlanded in every single round, and he was getting like completely schooled in most rounds. If that was in America, that fight would have been scored 11-1 and no one would have batted an eyelid. And, you know, I think, did they give, like, in the Sky one, did they give it 7-5 or did they give it a draw or something, saying they thought it could go either way? If that was in America, it would be 11-1. Simple as that. The reason I think Andrade, one of the reasons I think he looked kind of so poor, if you want to put it like that, is that I think his natural style is not that high tempo, really put it on a guy. And I think he felt, I'm in Germany, I really have to do this. I think he, you know, that's not his natural style to just be a high output guy. So I think, he fought against his natural rhythm and his natural output. On the other side of that as well, Culcahy was very tough. He's a very tough guy, and he was much better than I expected. But, just the most dreadful commentating performance I've never heard the likes of. I can honestly say I've never heard the likes of it. It puts, like, what were some of the clangers we've had? Brook, GGG was pretty bad. Frampton versus Quiver bad, but this took the biscuit.
Wow. I almost want to check it out just for that now. I did see on Twitter, like, going into the last round, I didn't watch the fight, but I did see on Twitter Sky had it like whoever wins the last round gets the decision, and I think I was like, what on earth is going on in this fight? You know, I thought it was going to be easy work for Andrade, but it sounds like it was just a bit of a strange night all in all.
Do you know, I was like listening to this commentary and I was going, are these morons going to influence the prices on the like live betting? And it went on, and at the start of the 12th round, do you know what the price was on Andrade on Betfair?
Go on.
1.03.
Okay, yeah.
That puts it into context. He was 33-1 on favourite. Yeah? And they were saying this is a close fight. Oh, I gave that round to Andrade. I was like, what fucking planet are these guys on? You know, even with that very bad commentating, you know, and it was absolutely dreadful. Most people, and it's very hard unless you're really kind of aware of the thing and you're paying close attention. Like, even people with that have given it 8-4. even with that level of bullshit talk.
Interesting. Okay. Tom, before we move it on, Andy Lee returns, fellow Irishman, or Liam Smith. Do you have anything more you want to, or even David Lemieux, do you have any further comments you want to add on the previous fights?
Yeah, I want to talk about David Lemieux's knockout. My God, that was brutal. And like, I really like boxing, but then like every so often you see something happen in the boxing ring and you're like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Am I a sociopath or something that I like boxing? Like that was brutal. David Lemieux is a dangerous man. If he can connect with you with a left hook, he is a dangerous man. Like, we're watching a sport where people do things like that, and if that was in the street, he would get 12 years in prison. What does it say about us?
Yeah. That was one of the worst ones I've seen, mate. It's pretty horrific stuff, right? But it sounds like Stevens has made a full recovery, thankfully.
Yeah, thanks for the cred.
Thanks for the what?
I said thanks be to God. I'm an atheist. I don't usually say it, but I said it there.
There we go. Cool. Paul, did you want to get anything else in on the previous results, mate, or shall we move it on to the news?
No, carry on.
Let's go to the news.
I got something to say. The Isaac Lowe fight,
yes,
which was shaping up to be a very good fight. Did anybody see the state of Tyson Fury?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's part of the news section, Tom. But let's
let's try that.
Because that was actually the next topic. So let's start with that. Tyson Fury claims he's 25 stone. Let me start by saying I don't believe he is 25 stone. I've seen Tyson Fury fight at 20 stone. When he fought that guy. Who's that guy he fought? Joey Abel. I think he weighed in at 20 stone for that. He looks a lot more than 5 stone heavier than that fight. I'm no dietitian, no nutritionalist, but I suspect the guy is closer to 30 stone. He looked in a bad way, as Tom correctly mentioned. Tom, surely this is a guy who's a year off being in fighting shape.
Oh, God, I don't think we'll ever see Tyson Fury back in shape ever again. And, if he has to cut 10 stone, we're giving out about Kell Brook having to cut a couple of stone. Tyson Fury has to cut 10 fucking... he's going to need that surgery. These fat people lose all the weight and they got skin flaps hanging out of the place. They need surgery to put him back together again to make him look like a proper boxer. Oh, my God.
It was pretty crazy, wasn't it? I mean, if Tyson Fury is best fighting at 18 stone, I actually think Irish probably has it not far wrong that Fury will, will need to lose something like 10 stone in order to be back in good nick. Tom, let me ask you a question. Tyson Fury has shown at several stages within his career that he's the kind of guy who's able to balloon and then get down in weight. He's still a relatively young man, especially in the contents of the heavyweight division. So if he does get down and if he does get back in the ring and if he, gets himself down to a decent size, is the damage that this has done, being this inactive and living the lifestyle that he's lived and, putting on the pounds he's done, is that damage going to catch up with him? And even if he gets in the ring looking lean, are we at a point where the damage is irreparable?
I think it probably is. Look, it's one thing putting on that weight when you're 21, 22 and cutting it. When was the last time we saw him fat? It was probably, when is that Joey Abel fight? That's a long time ago.
Yeah, God, 3.5 years, something like that, I would guess.
No, it's more than that. Come on.
You reckon more than that? Yeah.
Yeah, like in Cunningham, Steve Cunningham was probably 4 years ago, that fight.
Yeah.
What did he weigh for a Klitschko fight?
I think, the Klitschko fight, there was the controversy over the scales, but I think he said he was weighing about 18.5, I think.
That was the best I've seen him look, Tyson. He looked good in that.
Was it? Yeah, but the last time he was really fat, if he's 20 stone against Joey Abel, he wasn't that fat. The last time I remember him being really fat was probably like probably Derek Chisora, the first one. He was quite fat then.
Joey Abel was the fattest I've seen him, I think. I think the best I've seen, funnily enough, was actually
He's definitely been fatter than the Joey Abel fight, Tom. He's definitely been fatter. Yeah. He was fatter, I think, when he fought Chisora the first time, or John McDermott. He was fucking. When he fought John McDermott, he was about 23 stone or something. Yeah. He had jowls, Hank flabbing all over the place.
You can get away with it because not only was he fighting at a far lower level, but he was also a far younger man. You know, I think the state of him now, as you guys know, I'm one of his biggest advocates, but I find it very, very, very impossible to think that he's going to be the same guy if he cuts down in weight.
And he's not going to be fighting in fucking May.
I mean, he isn't fighting in May. I can tell you that.
No chance.
You know, if he was fighting in May, I'd probably bet on the journeyman to beat him. You know.
Yeah, I haven't seen these recent pictures of him, but if you guys are saying he looks really bad and whatnot, would you say he's more than 25 stone? I mean, 25 stone to a guy 6'9" is not the same as a guy, 5'10" being 25 stone, but it's still a lot.
I do believe he's more than 25 stone because having seen him at 20 stone and having seen the way he carries it, Tyson Fury at 20 stone in clothes does not look massively fat. This is the guy who looks swollen.
Totally. What's he doing? What's he doing to put that weight on as well? I think he's beering up an awful lot. He looks like a guy who puts on weight with beer. He's probably drinking 20 pints of beer a day. A big man like him would take it too. I think he's gone off the deep end, and I don't think we'll ever. If he comes back, he'll never be the same. He'll never be the same.
He won't fight this year. We won't see him this year. May. There's no chance of May, but I don't think we'll see him this year.
Lads, he's 20. He's 29 now. He's 28 and a half. It'll take him one full year to get back before he'll be in shape, and then he won't be near as good as he was. And I don't think we'll see him in the ring again, and I don't think we'll ever see him being at the top level again. I think he's done.
Yeah,
he's my favorite fighter as well. I hate to say it, but
I hate to say it as well. And I think if he does come back, he should have a very, very gentle comeback. I think they almost need to start him off. I think they need to start him off at below British level. I think they need to start him off against a Dominic Akinlade, an Ian Lewison, someone of that sort of ilk. I think that's the sort of level I'd be comfortable seeing him at, and then maybe in 2 or 3 fights time after that, stepping up to Euro level, maybe a Marius Wok, maybe a Christian Haber again, but right now, it needs to be baby steps, I think.
But the thing is he going to want a fight like that? Is he going to want to fight Ian Lewison? I don't think he would.
Well, it depends what his motivators are, because I'm sure if he got down to a respectable weight, he could probably jump straight in with one of the big names, because they'd probably be very keen to fight him after such a break. It would be the right time to catch him. So, look, if he just wants to make a quick 10 million and then retire off into the sunset, I think that option will remain available to him. But if he has genuine ambitions about retaining his titles and taking back the belts, I think he's got to start very, very slowly, personally, because the shape he's in, it doesn't matter what natural talent you have. No matter how much talent you have, if you're in that bad a shape, it's not going to end well, I'm afraid.
I just think with Tyson Fury, we've heard him dismiss people like Povetkin, calling him a midget, and dismiss a lot better fighters. And I think no matter what kind of shape he was in, someone told him you've got to fight Ian Lewison. I just do not see, no matter what sort of state he was in, I don't see him swallowing that at all. So I just don't.
Yeah. Okay, we're all agreed on that one. Let's move it on. Paul, did you see the Brook versus Spence announcement today, mate?
Yeah. The press conference as well. They had the press conference.
Yeah.
I don't know
from that, mate.
Yeah, I mean it was quite entertaining. Dominic Ingle, like really giving it to Spence's trainer and stuff. But Dominic Ingle, he come out with some. Did you guys see that press conference?
Absolutely. He said that Kell Brook was the reason for Golovkin's subpar performance, right?
God, he smashed him up and that. He was saying he like what fucking planet is he on? Like, you know, I kind of.
He said, here's what he said. He said that, you know, he thought that he was about to take over in the fight, that GGG was like on his ear. He was, oh my God, what a fucking moron.
And like that Spence's trainer kind of picked him up on it, and he was kind of back spot on, like, you know, really. He was kind of saying like you're kind of living off 2 good rounds in a fight you lost, like, you know, like, move on, which I thought, you know, fair play, you know, because that is like, come on, let's be honest. Kell Brook got smashed to pieces, and if that towel hadn't got thrown in, he would have got stopped. There's no doubt in my mind he was on his way to getting stopped. You know, this whole thing. Oh well, he ended on his feet. Yeah, well, he ended on his feet because, like,
he ended on his feet because he was holding onto the rope.
Yeah,
in one hand hanging onto the rope.
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, I mean that was ridiculous. Thought it was an interesting press conference. I thought both of them looked confident. The fighters. I think it's going to be an excellent fight. I'm starting to get really excited for this fight. I think it's going to be a really, really good fight.
Is anybody thinking of going to that fight?
Not up in Sheffield for me, mate. I've got to admit, it isn't the most appealing weekend away. I'll tell you what I took from it, though. Errol Spence made a comment that surprised me in this fight. Errol Spence said that between fights, he blows up to the high 170s. Do you know what? In the head-to-head against Kell Brook, I actually thought Errol Spence looked potentially even bigger than him. I thought Kell Brook was taller. I thought Errol Spence was taller. And the other thing is, I think Errol Spence was carrying a bit less body fat than Kell Brook. You know, Kell Brook looked a big guy up there, but to me, he was carrying a bit of chunk in his face, shall we say. Whereas I thought Errol Spence looked tall, lean, strong. People talk about Kell Brook being an absolute giant at 147, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that he isn't, but you know, Errol Spence is every bit as much of a giant. And you know, that was something that Errol Spence was referring to in the head-to-head. He was saying, this isn't you fighting Kevin Bizier, or this isn't you fighting Sean Porter, who's 5'7". You're up against someone your own size now. And there's a lot of truth in that, for my money.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's an argument to say Spence is bigger than him. I mean, he did look ever so slightly taller than him. I don't think there was a lot in it. But I think Spence probably hits a bit harder than Brook. One thing they did say that I kind of agreed with, though, they were saying about, like, people making a huge deal about the fact that Spence stopped
Bundu.
Not Bundu, Chris Algieri, and Manny Pacquiao couldn't stop him. One of them said it briefly there, and I've heard a lot of people saying it as well. Look, if the referee that was in the Algieri versus Spence fight was in the Pacquiao, what was it? Dominic Ingle said, I lost count after 4 times. I mean, Pacquiao dropped him that many times. It was fucking ridiculous, about 6 or 7 times. I mean, most refs would have stopped that. So I think there's a bit too much being read into that, you know. But still, I think Spence does look like the real deal for me, and I think he probably hits a bit harder than Kell as well.
Did anybody notice how this fight that was against a guy who nobody knew, and you know, it wasn't a fight that Eddie Hearn could sell? Did anybody notice how now it's the best fight in world boxing all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Anybody notice that? Fuck me, what changed overnight, lads? What happened to this Eddie Hearn, the world's greatest promoter?
I did notice that. But that's his job, isn't it, to promote? And I'm afraid to say that he's going to do a good job of it, and it is going to sell out, and it probably is going to be a smash hit on pay-per-view. So
what we learned from this is that Eddie Hearn is a lying scumbag.
Have you only
there's lots of clips. I think he said that Brazil was a much better opponent than Molina, and then changed his mind when the Molina fight came after Brazil for Joshua. You know,
I know.
Yeah, it's been time and time again, hasn't it?
Yeah, and the stick, it was so cringeworthy watching that thing. Like they had Kell Brook trained to say, "Oh, I was actually beating Golovkin." And, you know, I was just getting on top of him when, you know, my corner had to stop it because, you know, I was injured. And then he was also saying, oh, he busted him up. Look, GGG wasn't the same fighter after me. They were two pretty bad ones. And what was the third one they had? They were saying, like, yeah, Kell always wanted this fight. You know, he was never going to drop his belt and do anything. He spent the last 6 months trying to fucking get any other fight he could possibly get his hands on. Oh, my God. Fucking sickening.
Yeah, but that is, to be honest, I agree with you. When you break it down like that, it is sickening. But to an extent, that is the sport. That is the job of the promoter. That is the job of Brook's team. And, you know, whilst perhaps it isn't the most honest, that is the game. So I must admit, I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked. I'm not, you know, I kind of nothing that when I hear stuff like that nowadays, if that makes any sense at all.
That's because, Todd, that you've become assimilated.
Correct. I wouldn't disagree with you.
You're looking for that job. You're looking for that job on Sky as well. That's the thing.
They've been in touch, mate. They've been in touch, yeah. But there we go.
Don't take the money, Tom. Don't take the money.
Don't take the money. We'll see. Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs. Not to go back there, but let's talk the pay-per-view buys specifically. Substantial reports that the fight did between 130 and 150,000 pay-per-view buys. Although this is in the US market where the pay-per-view price is substantially higher than the UK price. What are your guys' take on that? I mean, I know Golovkin didn't do great figures against David Lemieux, but for me, that is a slightly poor showing in terms of the numbers.
I don't care what they are. To be honest with you, I don't give a shit.
Paul, do you have any instinct as to?
I don't really care. Apart from just from this perspective, the Canelo fans are now going, oh well, you know, this is just this just goes to show, you know, he really does need to come down to fucking 155 or whatever it is, and you know, it's just this idea that because Canelo is a bigger name, Triple G should fight him for the middleweight title at 155 pounds and should give in to all this. It's just like the biggest load of crap ever. I mean, Canelo's now moving up to what is it? What's the Chavez fight? 164.
Yeah, super Canelo weight.
164. So he couldn't make 160 to fight Triple G, and he handed in the belt, but he can make 164 to fight Chavez Jr. because it's an all Mexican. What is it on Cinco de Mayo? Probably
164 and a half, actually.
Fucking ridiculous, man! It's just ridiculous. That's the only thing I've got on it. Yeah,
I think it might make that fight with Canelo even harder to make because. That they, you know, we can be guaranteed this Canelo fight with Chavez Jr. is going to do great numbers. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think that's going to. I wouldn't be surprised if that does 1 million pay-per-view buys because they're two big names, and if that does like 700,000, 800,000 buys, it could easily do that. If you're getting like 300,000 or 400,000 for Liam Smith, you could easily see it getting that. And that might even make the fight harder to make because they'll say we want 80% and Golovkin say no. So I think that's only, I don't give a shit about the pay-per-view things, but I think that's the only reason why it's of interest.
I don't know if Golovkin's going to have the luxury of being able to say no. That's the only thing, though, because the thing is, I mean, I guess it depends on how much money he wants to make and how much he has made so far. I'm guessing he hasn't made ridiculous money so far. He's going to know. He's going to. I mean, if what we're seeing in Golovkin is right, and if it wasn't just an off night the other night, and he is getting old, which I kind of agree with you I think he did look older. He's bound to know that, and coupled with the fact that he's not big enough to move. People keep going on about, he needs to move up to 168, and all this. He's not a big middle. He's not big at 160. I've never thought Triple G should move up to super middleweight. And so he's. I mean, what are his options going to be? There's no more fights for him at 160. After Saunders and maybe Eubank Jr., what's he do? Where's he go? I mean, he just might not have the luxury of turning down a big fight like that.
No, I agree. Okay, we've still got quite a few bits to rattle through. So, Paul, Peter Fury denied a visa to enter New Zealand. Hughie Fury, if the fight goes ahead, will be without his father and cornerman for the fight. How relevant do you think this is?
I think it's quite relevant. There's been some speculation that Clifton Mitchell might be in his corner. I mean, to me, this just brings me back to when the purse bids situation happened, and Frank never made a kind of like a good enough bid. And I guess, if they're sealed bids, I guess you can only really guess what is going to be a good enough bid. And so he's kind of underestimated it. But I mean, it was 1 point something, wasn't it? 1.35 million or whatever. For a fight like that, and you alluded to this in either in the podcast before or maybe in one of your own videos, like you would think that getting the fight to the UK would have made good business sense in the long run, because it would have given Hughie a platform, given him a chance to win a world title and start to try and build him as a name. The heavyweights sell more. I just think it was bad business, and I think it's kind of like this is one of the first sort of like negative results of that bad bit of business, because I think it will make a difference. I think Hughie is, while he's not as sort of like unstable necessarily as Tyson, I think he is somebody that lacks in confidence. That sort of like acne thing, if it's not related to steroids, which we're not going to accuse anybody of anything on this podcast, but let's make that clear before they have to get taken down.
We won't. Yeah, in case they get taken down, we won't say anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. So if not, then that would indicate that maybe it's a nervous thing. People that come out in a lot of skin. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when people come out in a lot of skin conditions and rashes and whatnot, it's usually an indicator that they're a bit nervous or whatever. They're usually nervous conditions, and I think that this might affect him. He's never fought without his dad in his corner. Huge fight for him, biggest of his career. I think it will affect him. And I really hope he don't pull out because of it.
Yeah, I really hope he doesn't, definitely. And I think the other thing to factor in is they were planning on going out there a month in advance for training camp. So I don't know if they're going to, go to a neighbouring country or something like that to acclimatise to the conditions. And I don't know who's going to be in the corner. Could it be Clifton Mitchell again? I even mooted the idea earlier it could be Tyson Fury. That would generate a huge amount of interest. Tom, how relevant do you think that is, mate?
Sorry, how relevant is what? I think it's probably. Oh yeah, sorry, it's reasonably relevant, but it might make a difference. It's his father has trained him all his life, and he's a good trainer. And I don't think he's going to turn into a brawler like Tyson did against Cunningham. I don't think that's his natural kind of inclination as a fighter. So I don't think he'll have as big an impact as, say, it did on Tyson. But yeah, it is a negative for him. I think that it'd be a big negative if they can't get a training camp somewhere close. Maybe, they might train in Thailand or, I don't know, Japan or somewhere like that, somewhere that's close enough. And if they can do it out there, I think it's more important that Huey's with him for the month than it is for the night. That's the way I look at it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably a fair comment, but it can't help, especially in a fight that is possibly a fight that's going to go to distance and, could be a very, very close fight. It's, it's a different.
It is a disadvantage to Huey, definitely.
It is a disadvantage. And, Paul, it was, I believe it was a $3 million purse bid that secured it for Team Parker and Duco events. And you're spot on, mate, that I bet if Frank had his chance again, he'd stump up more than $3 million to get this one to the UK. But there you go. Paul, bizarre fight for you. Kubrat Pulev versus Kevin Johnson. Kubrat Pulev's an odd fighter, really. He's been in this IBF mandatory position for some time. He was offered the fight against Joshua and didn't take it. Now he's dragged Samuel Peter and Kevin Johnson out of retirement. I mean, is Kubrat Pulev still relevant? I still have him in my top 10, but, what's your take on this news?
He's making himself less and less relevant. And, I mean, they made a statement as well about this. I think Callie Sauerland and Pulev himself. I'm not sure who said what, but they were kind of like I mean, the way they were talking, you would think that it was against Povetkin or like they were really sort of like, this is going to be a really difficult fight, but with the help of the Bulgarian people behind me, I think I can become victorious and everything. It's like, this is Kevin Johnson. This is the guy that Anthony Joshua nearly sparked in the first round. It was an absolute miracle that Johnson made it back to his stall at all, and then blitzed out about 30 seconds into the second round. After that fight, he said he was never fighting again. I've realised I'm past it. I've got other things going on in my life. I can move on now. And now all of a sudden he's like this great opponent for Kubrat Pulev. What the hell is this guy doing, Kubrat Pulev? Honest to God, I've got no idea what he's doing. No idea.
And what is Kevin Johnson doing coming out of retirement? Apparently, according to him, a successful businessman outside of boxing. What on earth is he doing coming out of retirement?
Well, he needs money. I mean, people are always going to say they're successful. Quite often, that the reality is a different story. He needs the money. It's obvious, isn't it? I mean, he's not.
Can you imagine he's even getting a decent payday for this, though? I mean, Kevin Johnson's a guy who presumably has earned some checks in the past. I presume he got paid against Joshua and against Klitschko and against Fury and Chisora. You wonder. I don't know much about the Bulgarian pay-per-view market, but is Kubrat Pulev versus Kevin Johnson a fight that's going to generate interest to get him paid enough to come out of retirement and fly over to Bulgaria? It's very strange for me.
I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's not really that many Bulgarian fights, so you've got to imagine Kubrat Pulev is quite popular in Bulgaria. I mean, I guess Kevin Johnson is a bit of a name, and they might have stumped up a bit. I mean, they've obviously stumped up enough cash because he's taken the fight.
Correct. Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Kubrat Pulev goes, I just don't know what he's doing. I mean, for him to turn down the Joshua fight, is incomprehensible to me. If he's got some kind of ambition, it's just incomprehensible. And then to be taking Samuel Peter was incomprehensible enough. Now to be fighting Kevin Johnson is just, I just don't know what he's doing. I really don't.
Very, very strange. Very strange. He's actually getting worse fights each time. Irish, you won't have any interest in Pulev Johnson, so I won't ask you about that. Let me instead ask you about this World Super Series of Boxing tournament that has been launched. Do you have any instinct as to whether the tournament, what's the word I'm looking for? The tournament format can work in modern day boxing, and do you think this will be a success?
Yeah, I think it can work, and I think it can definitely be a success. I think it's structured much better than the Super Six, which had a round robin, which meant everybody had to fight each other once before you got to in the Super Six, or was it just finals?
Say again, Tom. Was it?
Did it semi-finals or just finals in the Super Six?
There was semi-finals, wasn't there? Because
I thought it was everyone fought everyone in the Super Six, wasn't it?
No, they did 2 sets of 3. They had a round robin, didn't they? And then they had the semis and I can't remember. But anyway, it ended up, there was a lot more fights you had to fight. I think you had to fight a minimum of 4. And, certainly the guys who got sparked early in the competition had to get replaced. And it took quite a long time. But this, I think, is, if it's eight guys in the thing, it's three fights to win it. There's no reason why it can't be over in 9 months. You don't have to.
Yeah, well,
the guy. Sorry?
It relies on people not getting cut or injured, though, doesn't it? Because what will spoil the format is if Fighter A and Fighter B have a very, very good fight, but Fighter A gets cut in a winning performance, and then they have to draft in someone completely unknown who's a lesser fighter than the original combatants to take on, the semi-finals. Do you know what I mean?
Necessarily, let's say you got your 4 initial fights. You got 8 guys. You got 4 initial fights. Say one of the winners, say, gets a bad cut, and can't continue. Okay, then you just take, say, they can judge who was the best loser of the 4 fights and just put them straight into the next one. I think if you want to do it, it's a lot easier than the round robin, where you had a round robin thing going, and one guy takes a bad loss or a knockout loss, and then that guy can't fight the next fight. But that's not going to happen like this most of the time. And I think that was it $50 million, so $25 million for each division they're going to do it in. That's a lot of money. You put that $25 million into a weight class, say, like the lightweight division. That means, and they're going to skew it to the high end, so the winner is going to get a lot of it. You could easily, I know in boxing tournaments, it's usually somewhere between about, for a small boxing, from poker tournaments, a tournament that size, you'd usually have close to half of the top money going to, 40% going to the outright winner. That could be $10 million to the winner, just for the win. I mean, just for the, yeah. So that's a lot of money for 3 fights for these guys. You look at, say, somebody like Cal Brook or Danny Jacobs and these guys, or Danny Jacobs got $1.5 million for fighting Golovkin. You're not going to have to fight 3 Golovkins and you could get $10 million. So I think it will definitely incentivize people. It'll bring people. I think they'll probably strategically attack certain divisions, and I definitely look forward to it. I think it's a great idea if it gets going. It'd be brilliant.
How many?
I just think
are they going to do? Because I saw a thing.
2 a year.
2 kicking off late summer with a view to being finished spring 2018, and I've heard that it's going to be cruiserweight and light middleweight.
Well, I heard middleweight and super middleweight today because they were talking about Triple G being in it. They were talking about Andre Ward was one of the fighters that they were talking about, so it might be light, heavy. I don't know.
What do you call them? You can imagine like super middleweight. James DeGale would definitely go into a tournament like that.
Yeah,
great money, good chance of winning. I think some of the worst divisions they're going to only accept people, I think, from the top 15 of the four weight classes. So there is some dross in there. But when you go to these weight classes like the cruiserweight, those boys aren't making $1 million a fight. They're just not. And if they get it.
DeGale will go in it at all, because I think for guys of that nature, the earning potential outside the tournament is actually more substantial.
I don't think so.
I massively think so.
I don't.
What's James DeGale getting for those fights he's fighting in America? He's getting about $1.5 million.
I don't think that's relevant, because I think it's been made very, very clear that in James DeGale's next fights, he's going to be fighting on British pay-per-view. And I think he's going to be targeting names like George Groves and demanding a 70% split on British pay-per-view and selling out the O2 Arena. You know, I think British boxing's at a point now where even if it is 10 million across 3 fights, that's $10 million. And I don't think that's going to attract names like James DeGale.
Well, James DeGale has certainly not made that money yet.
No,
he's made way more money than most of the British fighters that are fighting in England. You know, and he's made way more money than those guys, and he hasn't got close to 10 million for 3 fights. He got probably remember the purse bid for James DeGale against Andre Durrell was $1.5 million, and that was massive at the time.
He got $1.5 million for that,
I think.
He got over $1 million.
No, the purse bid.
No, the purse bid was $3 million.
The purse bid, well,
yeah.
Was it not $2 million?
Overbidding.
And Eddie Hearn bid in 1.5.
No, it was 3.1, I believe.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so DeGale got that. I think he got over $1 million for Badou Jack. But yeah, you're right. He hasn't earned that yet. But at this point, his earning potential is at its peak, in my opinion. And the fact that he's going to now be made into this pay-per-view fighter in the UK, and you know there are fights out there for him. I mean, DeGale versus Groves in a rematch is a huge fight, and DeGale versus Chris Eubank is a mega fight. You know, I don't know. I think cruiserweight and light middleweight are the best divisions out there for this, because I think at cruiserweight you get every one of the top names for that money, and I think at light middleweight, you know, at light middleweight I could see you getting Lara, Charlo, Andrade, Jared Hurd. I could see you getting all of them names. At cruiserweight you get Usyk, Huck, Bradis, you get all of those sort of guys. Gassiev, they're all going to want to fight for that amount of money.
Well, I think there's lots of divisions that do it. I think you do it at light welterweight. I think you'd get it at probably a lightweight. I think you would get it at a super featherweight, probably featherweight. You know, you look at, say, someone like Carl Frampton. He's probably they got what, 400,000 for the first fight. Probably I think a bit more, 750,000 or something for the second fight. You know, if we think there's $25 million in there, all the guys are going to be getting probably in the first round. They're all probably going to be getting close to $1 million. In the second round, that's $8 million gone. In the second round, if say to get $2 million in the semi-final each, that's another 16 million gone, and then you got say 6 for the winner and 3 for the loser. So you've got to, if you get all the way through, you get $9 million like that, and you're still getting $1 million at the start. Most divisions, your top 8 guys aren't getting $1 million, nowhere close.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of divisions that it could blow it open. Now, whether the fellas are going to, their promoters are going to allow them to go. But, you know, we've seen Al Heyman is okay with letting his fighters go when the money is good. And I think if you're like, look, you remember, your promoter works for you as a fighter. If you're someone like, imagine if like somebody like Ricky Burns could get to the semi-final of that in the lightweight division, or the light welter, and he's making $3 million. There's money he'll never have seen before in his life. So I think I think they'll actually be able to break through that barrier, because that's a lot of cash. Another thing I'd say is like the super middleweight one, when they ran that Super 6, that really was a great competition, and it took a bit long, but it was a great competition, and it made all those fighters much better known. You know, it made a star out of Andre Ward and Carl Froch. So I think they're great, and I want to see more, but I hope it works.
Yeah, I think it's a great platform, because I think if the number 7 and number 8 light middleweight in the world squared off, I think that's a fight that would probably only attract interest from the boxing hardcore. But I think in this kind of format, it's going to generate huge interest and build the fighters' platforms. I think people will buy into the fact this is a tournament and that they're seeing the same people over and over again. And it's a real springboard and platform for those sort of guys. You know, we talk about the Super 6, and that was clearly a massive platform. I mean, think back to the Contender, if you like. You know, I know that's ancient history now, but remember some of the names that came out of that. Sergio Mora, who we saw even recently fighting Danny Jacobs. Alfonso Gomez fought Canelo Alvarez. Peter Manfredo fought Joe Calzaghe. Paul Smith was in it. Sakio Bika was in it. He got some very, very big fights. K9 Bundrades, he became a world champion off the back of it. It's that kind of format that people buy into, creates platforms for fighters to go on to bigger and better things. And, some of those names I mentioned would have never have got those opportunities without that platform. So it's certainly something that I hope fighters go for. One thing, just final point, that concerns me is I think in this day and age of boxing, promoters, managers, boxers are obsessed with control, the ability to guide their own careers, choose their own broadcasters, choose their own venue, choose their own gloves, choose their own, everything. And I wonder if that's what's going to put some people off this, is they're going to have to fight 3 times in relatively quick succession on dates that are set, in formats that are set against opponents that they have no choice in. So even though the money's good, I wonder if for some people, possibly the bigger names, whether that lack of control is going to be detrimental in terms of assembling a world-class roster. But I think if they do target like middleweight and cruiserweight, I think they should get some very, very big names. Paul, did you have anything you wanted to contribute on this topic, mate?
No, not really. I mean, I agree with what everybody said. I just think as well, with Richard Schaefer being involved, I mean, he's I think that man could sell ice to the Eskimos, and I think he's going to sell this concept so well to the fighters. I really agree that I think a lot of these fighters are going to want to get involved for that sort of money. I just don't think a lot. I mean, if you look at Jacobs making it, what was it you said, Irish, about Jacobs? He made $1 million for the Triple G fight.
1.6 or 1.75 million, I think, something like that.
And that's to fight Triple G. So that just tells you, like, these fighters, unless they're fighting in a really big fight, they're not getting anything like them sort of purses. And if you think,
never know though, do you? I mean, he could easily get some of the pay-per-view upside on top of that, couldn't he?
Won't be too much upside in that pay-per-view.
True, but even if it did 150 buys at $60 a go, that's still £9 million. Sorry, $9 million. So you never know. But Paul, sorry, I interrupted you there, mate. My bad. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. But I mean, like a lot of expense has got to come out of that money. That's not 9 million that can go to fighters. So, but yeah, I mean, I just think, for all the reasons you guys have spoken about, it's always historically these sort of formats have been good for fighters' careers, and the current fighters are gonna know that. And I just think it will be too much money, especially in the lower divisions. There's some really, really good fights in them lower divisions, and this is a perfect opportunity for them to make some money, isn't it? Super featherweight. I mean, I'd really like to see some of the fights down there. So yeah, I mean, I hope they attract the fighters, and that it does well. I think it will.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, certainly it's something we'll cover again, and really, really hope it's a success. It'd be good for the sport if it is. Paul, let's stick with you. Let's move on to next week's boxing. Headlined, of course, by the rematch: Anthony Crolla versus Jorge Linares. Who are you picking in that one, Paul?
I mean, it's a similar thing to last time in that when you get to Linares' age, you never know which fight they're going to turn up and just be over the hill. I mean, if Linares fights anything like he did the last time, I just cannot see a way for Crolla to beat him. I just think he was so much better than Crolla last time. I just think Crolla is another one, a bit like Bellew, who is overachieved for me. I never really rated Crolla, and yet he's pulled out some good wins, but I just don't think he's a fighter that's got another gear. I don't think he's a fighter that is necessarily gonna come and do something different this time. I just don't think he's got that in him, and so I mean, I kind of like have to really pick Linares. I think Linares will win, to be honest.
Absolutely. Our opinions are completely said on that, Paul. I think I have to agree with every word you said there on that one. I'm siding with Linares here. And as I said in my video this week, for me, the biggest threat to Linares is the kind of scoring that we saw in the Gavin McDonnell Ray Vargas fight, because I don't see Crolla reinventing himself, and I don't see Crolla doing anything different, if I'm honest. He's a guy who's improved. He's a guy who, has got better throughout the course of his career, but he's never been the kind of guy who can deal with the sophisticated boxing that Jorge Linares showed in the first fight. Tom, are you joining Paul and I, with Team Jorge Linares, or do you think Anthony Crolla and the judges can maybe spring the upset?
Yeah, the best chance he had. There's two chances here for Crolla. One is he puts the razor blades in his gloves, and then the other one is Eddie Hearn gets that envelope out like he's well able to. Because I think your friend, what do you call your friend, the judge? Is he going to get him on? What's his name?
Ian John Lewis.
Ian John Lewis, yeah. I think he might have, your best mate judging again there, and he'll come to the rescue. I hope there are some American judges. I hope there's not 3 British judges.
Mate, I've got to admit, I'll be nervous as hell if Ian John Lewis is one of the judges.
I truly never. What was that fight that I was saying? There's no way they can do
Ray
this one.
Vargas. Yeah. So for you guys watching, Ray Vargas versus Gavin McDonnell. I sent Irish Tom a tweet after about 10 rounds saying, "Irish Tom, sorely Eddie the Envelope can't strike." And Irish Tom replied saying something to the effect of, "This fight is far too one-sided even for that."
And they still came through.
When I heard a majority decision, I almost fainted.
Yeah, like that was shocking. And I don't even know the scorecard. Had he like 7-5?
Nah,
7-5.
Actually, let's ask the chat. Did Ian John Lewis score it a draw, or did he score it in favour of Gavin McDonnell? I thought it was a draw, but maybe I've got that wrong.
No, I thought he scored it for McDonnell, actually.
I just go into the chat, and the first thing I see in the chat is Bet Paul is a spare ribs fanatic.
Oh no, I'm just seeing.
I don't know how on earth.
What the fuck is he on
Some
about?
of these chat topics are fantastic, but it was a draw, Mikey says. So Ian John scored it a draw. I thought it was a draw.
A draw, you're right.
Yeah.
114. Yeah, I just checked.
Yeah, 114. So but this isn't an isolated incident, isn't it? We've had Ricky Burns versus Kirill Relic, Ricky Burns versus Raymundo Beltran.
Beltran.
There's more than that. The first Crolla Linares fight was dodgy enough scoring for me. I'm sure there's more examples. If we could, Jamie McDonnell versus Solis. That was a pretty bad one, right?
Yeah, that was pretty terrible. Just take your pick. The people who had Kell Brook, they had a head on the scorecards against GGG. Sweet Jesus. Just take your pick. But I think I don't think that Crolla's got much. But I'm very suspicious of Crolla's dramatic improvement in the latter parts of his career and his current physique versus his old physique. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. No, I hear you, mate. I wanted to make one further point on that. Yeah, I mean, Jorge Linares, the only risk I see here is Crolla is the kind of fighter who's got a superb engine, superb fitness. He shows a lot of will to win, a lot of heart. If Jorge Linares overlooks Crolla, even 5 or 10%, if he does, because Linares is so confident it's easy money after the first win, then Crolla has the potential to make some of these rounds competitive. And if the judges are inclined to favour Crolla's work, let's put it that way, You never know. This fight could be close on the scorecard.
The other thing, gossip as well, is that didn't Linares break his hand in that fight?
I can't remember that, mate.
He did, yeah. Linares broke his hand in that fight. It's the only reason why it was actually closer than it could have been. So, maybe he can injure his hand, but if his hand doesn't break in this fight, I think he'll put a bigger schooling on him. So you get 4-7 on him. My betting has gone so drastically badly lately. Between GGG and the Hay fight, things have gone very downhill. So I'm putting it all on the line here with Linares. So he better come through or I'm fucking giving up.
Yeah, I did a betting video last week and I tipped Linares at 4-7. I think that's a good bet. I really do. And another bet I tipped, in fact, I'll actually be having a double on them, is the what I believe is the co-main event between Armfield and Brian Rose. So I picked a double on Jorge Linares to beat Crolla and Armfield to beat Brian Rose. Tom, do you have any instinct on that fight?
Not too much, but it depends on, Rose is the home fighter as well, so you're going to be battling judges again there as well.
I'm not 100% sure Rose is necessarily. He probably is, actually. No, you're probably fair, but Rose is he's done, isn't he? I mean, I don't think Eddie's going to be investing too much money in Rose. I think the reason they put this on is this is a big Blackpool derby, which is obviously close to Manchester, and they're probably hoping it sells a lot of tickets. But yeah, I can't imagine Eddie's going to throw his full weight behind Armfield, behind Rose, surely.
Yeah, doubt it.
You never know. You never know. Paul, do you have thoughts on Armfield Rose?
None whatsoever.
Okay, fair enough. I'm picking Armfield. I just think he's fresher. I think he's definitely a lot bigger. I think he's got more momentum, and I think Brian Rose is really shot. So I'm expecting Armfield to win and potentially put himself in line for a British title fight.
Coming off a win as well in the Armfield. So
who wins? Yeah, he beat John Ryder in an upset.
Yeah.
And then he got a very decent win on ITV4. So he's got some real momentum. So yeah, I'm rating Armfield in that one. On the undercard, Martin Ward versus Maxie Hughes. That's another fight. I think Katie Taylor is boxing as well, albeit I noticed on Oddscheckers he's 1-100. So I don't expect too high a risk of an upset there. On Friday night as well, Josh Taylor is fighting. I've just had a look now, and Josh Taylor's 1-100 on. So I don't believe that's going to be an overly competitive fight, but it's quite nice to have these. I believe that's potentially on terrestrial TV, is it, on Friday night? And it's always good to have boxing like that on as it's something that we haven't had historically, so it's nice to see it back. And I know a lot of you guys, I think Irish Tom in particular, really rate Josh Taylor as a future champion. So it'd be good to have another look at him as well, I'm sure.
Josh Taylor's elite.
Yeah. So I don't know if someone in the chat can confirm this for me, but is that Friday night on Channel 5, guys?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's not a great competitive fight by any stretch, but I'll flick that on and have a look at it definitely. Unfortunately, I'm actually away this weekend, so I'm not going to be able to do any coverage of Crolla Linares live or anything like that. But we'll do it on next week when I get back. But yeah, there you go, guys. Let's.
Are you Gossip? Are you and Jet having a clandestine affair? Is that what's going on?
I will be completely honest. I do actually have a new Mrs. Gossip.
I knew it.
And because we are in the honeymoon period of our relationship, doing things on the weekend is actually more exciting at the minute than watching boxing. So, yeah, with the last Mrs. Gossip, the ex Mrs. Gossip, it kind of got to a point where, after 3 or 4 years of relationship, even watching a Southern Area title was more exciting than spending the weekend together. But still pretty much in the honeymoon phase with the new one yet. So
hope she's not watching, eh?
Yeah. Well, what gossip? What if it was the Boy Jones Jr. Southern Area title though fight?
Oh, well, if that was the case, she'd be sitting at home with a takeaway, mate. Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
It's quite sad though. I've actually so this is the thing, like I do actually have a life outside of YouTube. You know, I've got a full-time job and family and all of that sort of stuff. But on my calendar on my phone, I've got the dates of literally every major boxing fight coming up. So if I get invited to do anything by girlfriend or by family, I can go, oh no, sorry, Huey Fury's fighting that day. Can we do it on one of the other weekends? So there you go. There you go. Just a gripping insight into my personal life there. We've digressed massively. Paul, I think that brings us to the close of our forecasted topics. We've overrun slightly, mate. Let me give you a quick chance to see if there's anything else you wanted to throw into the ring in terms of further topics or further things to discuss.
Well, just one thing quickly, if you don't mind. Did anybody see the young Irish kid Michael Conlan debut?
Oh yeah.
Did anybody see that? What
I
did you
did.
think? What did you think of him? I didn't think much. I mean, like I know it was his debut and whatnot, but I didn't think he looked good at all.
Yeah, hard to judge. Like, well, I don't think he's not going to be Pacquiao or anything like that. But I think he'll really win a title.
Was he falling into the guy all the time? Like every time he was throwing a punch, like he was really going for the knockout. So much so that he was like falling into him. At one point, he tried to throw this like haymaker, and he fell into him so much he ended up in the corner with the guy hitting him. Like the guy was in the corner.
Yeah,
fell into him so much.
I think he was like buzzed off his head because he had 5,000 crazy Irish drunks in the crowd going mental, you know, and I think he was just probably hyped out of his mind, you know.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. As I say, I give him some leeway because it was his debut, and like you say, big event. Conor McGregor standing there and whatnot. But yeah, I just wondered what anybody else thought of that. Nothing else from me. That's me lot.
I've got a couple of things.
There's a surprise.
Is there? Is there a bigger shower of wankers in boxing than the GGG haters and the GGG fanboys?
No.
Possibly the Roman Gonzalez fanboys.
Jesus, no, that's a bit that's a stretch. Like, you know, I've even noticed on your channel after that GGG, unless you're calling me a fanboy of Gonzalez, fuck you, gossip. No,
on there, a bit slow on the uptake there, Irish.
Yes, sorry. I was too busy talking and listening to my own voice. There was like there's even like guys in your comments doing alt-right shit. I don't know if you know is that gossip. So all these fucking racists and fucking fanboys can go fuck themselves. That's the way I feel about it. They give boxing a bad name. Then the other thing I thought that we should discuss for at least an hour is how Ireland bet the brakes off England in the rugby.
Do you know what? I watched that game actually, and I was impressed by Ireland. They were, in many ways, the complete antithesis of Roman Gonzalez, because Ireland operated a high defensive line and they were prepared to sort of grind it out by making the tackles and scoring points when the opportunities arose. You know, whereas Roman Gonzalez, for example, completely negated the defense and went for broke against, you know, a bigger, more athletic team.
Well, it's a
somewhat tenuous link I'm going for here, isn't it?
Very tenuous, and it's very hard to, like, you know, to give Ireland much props in rugby because they play the worst, most dour brand of rugby. But at least they're able to beat England, and there is nothing better than stopping England winning a Grand Slam and sending them home again. I must say, I enjoy that, but I don't enjoy Irish style of play.
Did you bet on Ireland, mate?
No, I normally bet on England when they play Ireland, because then I win whatever happens. You know, I don't give a shit about the money when they lose, and when they win, I go, at least I've got some money.
Definitely. Are you a rugby fan, Paul?
Not really.
Not really. Good. We're considering starting the rugby gossip channel.
Yeah, mate. Count me out.
But there you go. Good stuff. All right. Well, that brings us to a close. We've overrun, but that's no bad thing. Lots to catch up upon with 2 weeks of action. We'll be back next week, 8:30 on Wednesday, and we'll obviously be discussing Anthony Crolla robbing Jorge Linares, and we will also be previewing the Marco Huck versus Bradis fight. For us hardcore fans, that genuinely is an elite fight. Cannot wait for that matchup. This would be really, really good. So lots to look forward to. Good times for boxing as always, and we'll leave it there. If you're new to the channel, you've been watching us, you haven't done so before, please do subscribe so you can check out the podcast on a regular weekly basis. If you've enjoyed this, do take the chance to click the thumbs up button now, which adds some visibility to the channel. I can see at present we're on 57 people, so that's much appreciated. If you're watching live or you're watching later after this has gone up, please do hit that button. But yeah, that's all from us now. Thanks very much for joining, everyone. Thanks to Paul and Tom for giving up their Wednesday evenings. Happy birthday again to Paul, and we'll leave it there.
Do it.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cool.